tusimame pamoja kulinda uhuru na umoja wetu. Enyi Bwana na binti wa Afrika, mwili wa jua, mwili wa anga, tuifanye Afrika mti wa uzima. Tuungane sote tuimbe pamoja, kuenzi shikamano hatima yetu. Tujitoe wenyewe kupambana pamoja, uhuru na umoja vitawale. Enyi Bwana na binti wa Afrika, mwili wa jua, mwili wa anga, tuifanye Afrika mti wa uzima. Tuungane sote na tujibidishe kutoa kilicho bora kwa Afrika, chimbuko la wanadamu, chemchemi ya utamaduni, tumaini letu wakati wa mafarakano. Enyi Bwana na binti wa Afrika, mwili wa jua, mwili wa anga, tuifanye Afrika mti wa uzima.
Let us make Africa the tree of life. This is Humans TV Africa, and of course, my name is Katom Mukasa. Here in the studio is Dance Bongo to do the show. I have to remind you that Humans TV Africa is a registered charity that does media work in the world. We have studios in Uganda, studios in Kenya, Zambia, Zimbabwe, Ghana, Nigeria, Sierra Leone, UK, and the US. We want to encourage you to please subscribe to our channel, which is Humans TV Africa right there. Our channel on Facebook, YouTube, TikTok. Our website is Humans TV Africa. Simply subscribe, look us up, send us an email, WhatsApp us, but also look for us on Facebook. Humans TV Africa is the name. Today, we continue to provide information about Africa, information about the world. And in this series, we talk about countries in the world. Today, we handle Ivory Coast. We handle Ivory Coast, also known as Côte d'Ivoire. Ivory Coast. What do you know about Ivory Coast? Of course, some of us know Ivory Coast because of football players. Tule, Didier Drogba, and others. When we talk about Ivory Coast, we remember Didier Drogba. Do you know that Didier Drogba is the richest man in Ivory Coast? We shall find out that and more in this episode. Now, this is the map of Ivory Coast. As you can see, a very, very beautiful map with such exciting colors. Of course, Ivory Coast has the green, white, and that orange there. It's a beautiful country, beautiful map, and of course, not so big. A country the size of New Mexico. If you're in the US, the size of New Mexico was slightly bigger than Poland. Now, Ivory Coast has lots of minerals as a country, but before we go to the minerals, we say that Ivory Coast is located in West Africa. It's located in West Africa, and it's between other countries, of course. Neighboring Ivory Coast are Liberia, Guinea, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Ghana. It has a coastline on the Gulf of the Guinea. Ivory Coast has a coastline. It makes it very, very easy to move from outside and to move from Ivory Coast to go to other countries because of the coastline to the Gulf of Guinea. Remember, it has Burkina Faso, Mali, Guinea, and of course Ghana right there, and Liberia. Then the ocean, the Atlantic Ocean. Remember, Ivory Coast guys that speak French because they were a colony of the French government for a long time. Ivory Coast comprises of 322,000 kilometers, which is about 124,000 square kilometers wide, of which much of it is land, and only 4,516 kilometers, square kilometers is covered by water right there. As I told you, Ivory Coast is the size of Germany, if you ask me, and slightly smaller than Poland, but also slightly larger than the US state of New Mexico. It's a lovely country. It was occupied by the French in 1842. 1842, the French declared Ivory Coast their protectorate and ruled it as the French colonial rule. They introduced it into their rules, of course, into their docket following the scramble. Remember the scramble for Africa in the 1880s, and of course the Berlin Conference 1884 and others, and Ivory Coast became their territory. What was called as the French West Africa in 1904 until 1960, when Ivory Coast regained their independence. Ivory Coast is a rich country, I should tell you. But what do we know about Ivory Coast? We know that they are the world's top exporter of coke and raw cashew nuts. They export coke, raw cashew nuts, and of course the net exporter of oil. Ivory Coast has oil. They export oil with a significant manufacturing sector. Côte d'Ivoire, as is known, is the largest economy, one of those largest economies in West Africa. It has oil, it has gold, it has iron ore, it has bauxite, it has manganese, and also it has lots of cashew nuts, and of course coke, or cocoa, as we call it locally. Now, Ivory Coast is also known for its oil, its iron ore, which is mined at Mount Nimba. Iron ore, which is mined at Mount Nimba. The official language in Ivory Coast is the French language. Of course, there are many indigenous languages spoken in Ivory Coast, which also include Bola, Diola, Dan, Ani, Sebal, Sanfo, and others. There are a total of 78 languages spoken in Ivory Coast. In terms of fauna, Ivory Coast is quite rich. Let's look at the population of Ivory Coast, for example. Here, according to World Bank, Ivory Coast has 28 million people. 28 million people, and of course, per kilometer, about 87 people cover it. Now, in terms of life expectancy, Ivory Coast life expectancy is too low for the males at only 57, and for the female at only 59 years. Birth rate is quite high at 33 per live birth. Of course, death rate is 9, which is a bit very good right there, a bit lower compared to other countries. And of course, male to female ratio, there are more males in Ivory Coast than females, 50 to 49. Quite interesting there in Ivory Coast. In terms of climate, in Ivory Coast, we see that is all equatorial countries. Just like all equatorial countries, Ivory Coast has a tropical climate, and of course, unlike Europe and US, it is not so different in other areas in Africa. The average daytime temperature range between 29 to 35 degrees, and of course, in much of the country, temperature can rise to 38 degrees centigrade. You can imagine temperature can be so high. Let's look at other facts very fast other facts as we look at Ivory Coast. Now, official language, I told you, is French, and of course they have other traditional languages, indigenous languages, local languages. Akan is the leading local language at 30% of the people talking Akan. They also talk Gwa, which is 11%, Malinke 11%, Kru 10%, Bambara, South Mande. Of course, they also talk their own French version. Right there. These are the languages we can find in Ivory Coast. We look at other factors. We look at religion. How is the religion doing in Ivory Coast? Tell me something. I will tell you what. Ivory Coast has many Muslims and Christians. Muslims are the majority in Ivory Coast. They are 38%. Almost 39% are Muslims, but also 32% are Christians. Those people say Christ, 32%. Native religions also have a big number at 11%. Those who don't identify with a specific religion are 16%, quite a big number there. People that are not denominational, I'm not saying they are Muslims, not natives, not Christians. They are in between there. They are 16%, quite a big number, by the way, in Ivory Coast. Now, in terms of economy, Ivory Coast is worth 70 billion US dollars, quite a big an economy. Uganda is only 45. Ivory Coast is 70 billion US dollars. In fact, Ivory Coast is bigger than Kenya. No, Kenya is quite bigger, but it's bigger than Uganda, of course. It's bigger than Rwanda and these other countries. Yeah, Kenya remains bigger because Kenya is 100 plus billion dollars. Ivory Coast is $17 billion. Now, in terms of exportations, Ivory Coast earns $16 million through exports, but also spends $16 million through imports. Now, that is net zero because they spend as much as they earn. Now, that is the problem with Ivory Coast because tourism gives them so much money at about $199 million there. The debt rate in Ivory Coast is quite high, 56% of debt in terms of GDP. That is quite challenging. Unemployment is at almost 3%. Inflation is worse. If you have inflation at 5%, you must be worried. Corruption is too bad in Ivory Coast, ranked on the index as 37. That is too bad. 37 at the index of corruption is bad, which means Ivory Coast is also doing very badly in terms of corruption, promoting corruption. That is quite threatening. Now, due to the critical financial situation in Ivory Coast, it is heavily indebted poor country. You cannot imagine Ivory Coast is an heavily indebted poor country. It's not doing that well, despite having 70% of US dollars for the GDP there, with an average annual income of $2,000, quite low. Ivory Coast basically remains among the lower middle income countries. Lower middle income countries. You can compare it with countries like Kenya. Kenya is a lower middle income country. And of course, Botswana is higher than Ivory Coast, for example. Nigeria is still in the lower middle income country too. Now, in terms of land use, in Ivory Coast, in terms of land use, much of the land use there goes for agriculture, which is 65%. Forests are quite many in Ivory Coast at 9%. Water covers only 1%. And of course, others, right? The urban centers cover 1% of Ivory Coast right there. Thank you so much. Now, we look at other figures of Ivory Coast very fast to tell you a bit more about Ivory Coast. Now, look at cities, important cities in Ivory Coast. Of course, we know Abidjan as the main one there, the capital, Abidjan there, but also we have Yamoussoukro, also mentioned here as the capital. Now, our research should be done properly because here they are mentioning Yamoussoukro as the capital, but our books give us Abidjan. So we shall do more research. But of course, you see that Abidjan has more people, 5 million in this city. And of course, it's followed by Abobo, which has 1 million plus in the city. Abidjan has more people, 5 million in the city out of the 28 million people in this country. We have other cities like Boke, Kahogo, and Daroa as other cities in Ivory Coast there. So Ivory Coast with the people there. In terms of political indicators, Ivory Coast has been not well governed, but of course, again, not the worst, because at least instabilities in Ivory Coast hasn't been so much as seen in other West African countries. Not so well managed, but at least no many instabilities as we may see in many other West African countries. Of course, they have had their own challenges. They had guerrilla wars there. Didier Drogba had to appeal to them to put the guns down. Yes, they have their own share of instabilities, but they are trying to recover from it there. Now, that is Ivory Coast. Political indicators, not so good. Right there, like many other African countries, honestly, not so good. Now, Ivory Coast has trade agreements with COMESA, which is the community of Saharan states. So, of course, Ivory Coast also has agreements with ECOWAS, the Economic Community of West African States, also has agreements with UMOA, which is the Economic and Monetary Community of West Africa It also has many alliances like African Union. It's part of the non-aligned movement, the G33 Forum for Development Countries, the G7 plus groups of fragile states, Latin Union, and OIC, Organization of the Islamic Cooperation, because there are many Muslims in Ivory Coast. So they are tending towards that. Now let's look at the people of Ivory Coast. They love colors. Africans love brighter colors. Africans with colors and decorations, as you can see. Africans love colors. Africans have life. They are beautiful people right there in Ivory Coast. Beautiful people, happy people right there in this country. Did you know that much of Ivory Coast is in fact a happy people, a people dance, laugh, smile? Do you know that Ivory Coast has foods that we have in West Africa, that we have in East Africa? Matoke in Ivory Coast, call them bananas. Everything you see in East Africa can be seen in Ivory Coast. Ivory Coast is so lovely, tropical weather. They have bananas, they have yams, they have sweet potatoes, they have all these foods we see in East Africa. They have beans. When you're in Ivory Coast, you may think you're in Uganda. I should tell you that. Beautiful women, of course, there in Ivory Coast, right there. And of course, they are quite good people. They have fish. All the foods you know in East Africa, you will find it in Ivory Coast, including coke and cashew nuts. You find them in Ivory Coast. They have timber, they have bananas, they have pineapples, and all these other foods, coke, timber, bananas, pineapples, coffee. Ivory Coast has every food you know in East Africa. You'll find it in Ivory Coast. The cashew nuts and others are quite there in plenty in Ivory Coast. Ivory Coast, I should tell you that when you ask for the richest people in Ivory Coast, they are going to point to you footballers, entertainers. The man called Didier Drogba is the richest man in the Ivory Coast, net worth of $90 million. You can imagine. Didier Drogba has a net worth of $90 million. One of the richest persons in Ivory Coast, followed by Yaya Toure, net worth is $70 million. Then there is Salomon Kalou, whose net worth is $11 million. Now, Ivory Coast soccer players, entertainers have more money than industries in Ivory Coast, have more money than factories in Ivory Coast. You can see the mining taking place in Ivory Coast. The question is, who takes this money? Lots of mines in Ivory Coast, lots of good vegetable, lots of good environment, beaches. The question is, how is this money spent in Ivory Coast? Cashew nuts, coke, all these things can be seen in Ivory Coast. But the challenge is poverty. Ivory Coast has wildlife. There are all these animals. By the way, some animals will only find them in Ivory Coast. Some animals you only find them in Ivory Coast. I'll mention for you a few of these animals that you will only find in Ivory Coast. Some animals you can only find them in Ivory Coast. You can see them there. The epidemic hippopotamus, you only find them in Ivory Coast if you observe very, very well. The Senegal bush bedding, of course, you can also find them in Senegal right there, but mainly you will find them in Ivory Coast. It makes it really tick. A beautiful country right there. You have a Nile crocodile there, a big crocodiles, if you ask me. They are in Ivory Coast. The black-crowned crane, not the one in East Africa, but this one is called the black-crowned crane. We only find it in Ivory Coast. Very beautiful bird there. The West African slender snouted crocodile, you'll find it in Ivory Coast right there. Then we have the spotted hyena. The hyenas which are spotted, greedy creatures right there. You'll find them in the bushes of Ivory Coast. Then we have the African manatee. African manatee, you also find it in the waters in Ivory Coast. They have the African leopard, of course, you find it in many tropical African forests. You find the African leopard, the leopard in the mood tree. The lions are quite there in big numbers in Ivory Coast. So if you want to go and visit, please think about it. African wild dog, those wild animals, you find them in the forests of Ivory Coast. Of course, there's this obi, the animal there. Its scientific name is Oribi, and of course, it's being conserved in Ivory Coast. The Oribi animal right there in Ivory Coast. We have the giant eland. The giant eland one of the biggest animals in the world. You can find it in Ivory Coast, being conserved for survival right there. They also have the Egyptian vulture. It's a bird that was first of all spotted in Egypt during the Pharaoh times, ancient times, Kemetic times. It was called the Egyptian or Pharaoh vulture. Pharaoh vulture right there. They have also the African fish eagle, which basically targets the fish, the African fish eagle right there. Now, this man, Alassane Ouattara, has been serving as the president of Ivory Coast since 4th December 2010, and the presidential elections were held in Ivory Coast on 31st October 2020, and is the incumbent president from 2010 up to now. Is the incumbent president. De-elected is over 95% of the votes, of course, amid this opposition boycott. That is the man, Alassane Ouattara. The man there, Alassane Ouattara, the guy in charge of Ivory Coast since 2010. Now he has a new term of 5 years. Since 2010, the man is ruling Ivory Coast there. But Ivory Coast remains among the countries that are highly indebted, poor countries in the world. This is not good news for Ivory Coast. They have gold, they have diamonds, they have iron ore, they have coke, they have all these minerals, they have all these beaches. Given their proximity to the ocean, they have the best environment, the best food in the world, small population of 28 million people, but 60% of people in Ivory Coast are very poor. They live below the poverty line. Footballers, Didier Drogba, Yaya Toure, and the others are the richest guys in Ivory Coast. Why do they get their money? Through sports, through playing for teams like Chelsea and others. Footballers in Europe are much more richer than all the sectors in Ivory Coast. That is interesting, a fact to note, but also something like a wake-up call that African countries must really work hard to get their people out of poverty. To see this and more of exposure about African countries, about countries in the world, always look us up on country profiles to know more facts about the countries that you don't normally know about on social media. This is Sumana TV Africa, and of course, I want to encourage you to please subscribe and get more of this in our next episode. See you in the next one.